Jerubbaal, otherwise known as Gideon, got up early the next morning, all his troops right there with him. They set up camp at Harod Spring. The camp of Midian was in the plain, north of them near the hill of Moreh. God said to Gideon, "You have too large an army with you. I can't turn Midian over to them like this. They'll take all the credit, saying I did it all myself, and forget about me. Make a public announcement. Anyone afraid, anyone who has any qualms at all, may leave Mount Gilead now and go home." 22 companies headed for home. 10 companies were left. God said to Gideon, "There's still too many. Take them down to the stream, and I'll make a final cut. When I say this one goes with you, he'll go. When I say this one doesn't go, he won't go." So Gideon took the troops down to the stream. God said to Gideon, "Everyone who laps with his tongue the way a dog laps, set on one side, and everyone who kneels to drink, drinking with his face to the water, set to the other side. 300 lapped with their tongues. From their cupped hands, all the rest knelt to drink." God said to Gideon, "I'll use the 300 men who lapped at the stream to save you and give Midian into your hands. All the rest may go home." After Gideon took all their provisions and trumpets, he sent all the Israelites home. He took up his position with the 300. The camp of Midian stretched out below him in the valley. That night, God told Gideon, "Get up and go down to the camp. I've given it to you. If you have any doubts about going down, go down with Purah, your armor bearer. When you hear what they're saying, you'll be bold and confident." He and his armor bearer Purah went down near the place where the sentries were posted. Midian and Amalek, all the Easterners, were spread out on the plain like a swarm of locusts, and their camels, past counting, like grains of sand on the seashore. Gideon arrived just in time to hear a man tell his friend a dream. He said, "I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp. It came to the tent and hit so hard it collapsed. The tent fell." His friend said, "This has to be the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has turned Midian, the whole camp, over to him." When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he dropped to his knees before God in prayer. Then he went back to the Israelite camp and said, "Get up and get going. God has just given us the Midianite army." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies. He gave each man a trumpet and an empty jar with a torch in the jar. He said, "Watch me and do what I do. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly what I do. When I and those with me blow the trumpets, you also all around the camp blow your trumpets and shout for God and for Gideon." Gideon and his 100 men got to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after the sentries had been posted. They blew the trumpets at the same time, smashing the jars they carried. All 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held the torches in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands, ready to blow, and shouted, "A sword for God and for Gideon." They were stationed all around the camp, each man at his post. The whole Midianite camp jumped to its feet. They yelled and fled. When the 300 blew the trumpets, God aimed each Midianite sword against his companion all over the camp. They ran for their lives to Beth Shittah, towards Rarah, to the border of Abel Maholah, near Tabath. Israelites rallied from Naphtali, from Asher, and from all over Manasseh. They had Midian on the run. Gideon then sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, urging them, "Come down against Midian, capture the fords of the Jordan at Beth Barah." So all the men of Ephraim rallied and captured the fords of the Jordan at Beth Barah. They also captured the 2 Midianite commanders, Oreb, otherwise defined as Raven, and Zeb, which means wolf. They killed Oreb at Raven Rock. Zeb they killed at Wolf Winepress. And they pressed the pursuits of Midian. They brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan. Judges chapter 8. Then the Ephraimites said to Gideon, "Why did you leave us out of this, not calling us when you went to fight Midian?" They were indignant and let him know it. But Gideon replied, "What have I done compared to you? Why, even the gleanings of Ephraim are superior to the vintage of Abiezer. God gave you Midian's commanders, Oreb and Zeb. What have I done compared with you?" When they heard this, they calmed down and cooled off. Gideon and his 300 arrived at the Jordan and crossed over. They were bone tired, but still pressing the pursuit. He asked the men of Succoth, "Please give me some loaves of bread for my troops I have with me. They're worn out, and I'm hot on the trails of Zebah and Zalmunna, the Midianite kings." But the leaders in Succoth said, "You're on a wild goose chase. Why should we help you on a fool's errand?" Gideon said, "If you say so, but when God gives me Zebah and Zalmunna, I'll give you a thrashing. Whip your bare flesh with desert thorns and thistles." He went from there to Peniel and made the same request. The men of Peniel, like the men of Succoth, also refused. Gideon told them, "When I return safe and sound, I'll demolish this tower." Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with an army of about 15 companies, all that was left of the fighting force of the Easterners. They had lost 120 companies of soldiers. Gideon went up to the caravan trail east of Nobah and Jogbehah, found and attacked the undefended camp. Zebah and Zalmunna fled, but he chased and captured the 2 kings of Midian. The whole camp had panicked. Gideon, son of Joash, returned from the battle by way of Heres Pass. He captured the young man from Succoth and asked him questions. The young man wrote down the names of the officials and leaders of Succoth, 77 men. Then Gideon went to the men of Succoth and said, "Here are the wild geese, Zebah and Zalmunna, you said I'd never catch. You wouldn't give so much as a scrap of bread to my worn-out men. You taunted us, saying that we were on a fool's errand." Then he took the 77 leaders of Succoth and thrashed them with desert thorns and thistles, and he demolished the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city. He then addressed Zebah and Zalmunna. "Tell me about the men you killed at Tabor." "They were men much like you," they said, "each one like a king's son." Gideon said, "They were my brothers, my mother's sons. As God lives, if you had let them live, I would let you live." Then he spoke to Jether, his firstborn, "Get up and kill them." But he couldn't do it, couldn't draw a sword. He was afraid. He was still just a boy. Zebah and Zalmunna said, "Do it yourself if you're man enough." And Gideon did it. He stepped up and killed Zebah and Zalmunna. Then he took the crescents that hung on the necks of their camels. The Israelites said, "Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson. You've saved us from Midian's tyranny." Gideon said, "I most certainly will not rule over you, nor will my son. God will reign over you." Then Gideon said, "But I do have one request. Give me each one of you an earring that you took as plunder." Ishmaelites wore gold earrings, and all the men had their pockets full of them. They said, "Of course, they're yours." They spread out a blanket, and each man threw his plundered earrings on it. The gold earrings that Gideon had asked for weighed about 43 pounds. And that didn't include the crescents and pendants, the purple robes worn by the Midianite kings, and the ornaments hung around the necks of their camels. Gideon made the gold into a sacred ephod and put it on display in his hometown, Ophrah. All Israel prostituted itself there. Gideon and his family, too, were seduced by it. Midian's tyranny was broken by the Israelites. Nothing more was heard from them. The land was quiet for 40 years in Gideon's time. Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went home and lived in his house. Gideon had 70 sons. He fathered them all. He had a lot of wives. His concubine, the one at Shechem, also bore him a son. He named him Abimelech. Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good old age. He was buried in the tomb of his father Joash at Ophrah by the Ezbeizrites. Abimelech. Gideon was hardly cool in the tomb when the people of Israel had gotten off track and were prostituting themselves to Baal. They made Baal of the covenant their god. The people of Israel forgot all about God, their God, who had saved them from all their enemies and who had hemmed them in. And they didn't keep faith with the family of Jerubbaal, in other words, Gideon, honoring all the good he had done for Israel. Judges chapter 9. Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his uncles and all his mother's relatives and said to them, "Ask all the leading men of Shechem, what do you think is best, that 70 men rule you, all those sons of Jerubbaal, or that one man rule? You remember that I am your own flesh and blood." His mother's relatives reported the proposal to the leaders of Shechem. They were all inclined to say Abimelech because they said, "He is, after all, one of us." So they gave him 70 silver pieces from the shrine of Baal of the covenant. With the money, he hired some reckless riffraff soldiers, and they followed along after him. He went to his father's house in Ophrah and killed his half-brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men, and on one stone. The youngest, Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, managed to hide, the only survivor. When all the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo gathered at Beth the Oak by the standing stone at Shechem, and crowned Abimelech king. When all this was told to Jotham, he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim, raised his voice and shouted, "Listen to me, leaders of Shechem, and let God listen to you." The trees set out one day to anoint a king for themselves. They said to Olive Tree, "Rule over us." But Olive Tree told them, "Am I no longer good for making oil that gives glory to gods and men, and to be demoted to waving over trees?" The trees then said to the fig tree, "You come and rule over us." But Fig Tree said to them, "Am I no longer good for making sweets, my mouth watering sweet fruits, and to be demoted to waving over trees?" The trees then said to Vine, "You come rule over us." But Vine said to them, "Am I no longer good for making wine, wine that cheers gods and men, and to be demoted to waving over trees?" All the trees then said to Tumbleweed, "You come and reign over us." But Tumbleweed said to the trees, "If you're serious about making me your king, come and find shelter in my shade. But if not, let fire shoot out from Tumbleweed and burn down the cedars of Lebanon." Now listen, do you think you did a right and honorable thing when you made Abimelech king? Do you think you treated Jerubbaal and his family well, did for him what he deserved? My father fought for you, risked his own life, and rescued you from Midian's tyranny, and you have just now betrayed him. You massacred his sons, 70 men on a single stone. You made Abimelech, the son by his maidservant, king over Shechem's leaders because he's your relative. If you think that this is an honest day's work, this way you have treated Jerubbaal today, then enjoy Abimelech and let him enjoy you. But if not, let fire break from Abimelech and burn up the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire break from the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo and burned up Abimelech. And Jotham fled. He ran for his life. He went to Beer and settled down there because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. Abimelech ruled over Israel for 3 years. Then God brought bad blood between Abimelech and Shechem's leaders, who now worked treacherously behind his back. Violence boomerang. The murderous violence that killed the 70 brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, was now loose among Abimelech and Shechem's leader who had supported the violence. To undermine Abimelech, Shechem's leader put men in ambush on the mountain passes who robbed travelers on those roads, and Abimelech was told. At that time, Gaal, son of Ebed, arrived with his relatives and moved into Shechem. The leaders of Shechem trusted him. One day they went out into the fields, gathered grapes in the vineyards, and tried them in the winepress. Then they held a celebration in their God's temple, a feast, eating and drinking. And then they started putting down Abimelech. Gaal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is this Abimelech? And who are we Shechemites to take orders from him? Isn't he the son of Jerubbaal, and isn't this his henchman, Zabul? We belong to the race of Hamor and bear the noble name of Shechem. Why should we be toadies of Abimelech? If I were in charge of this people, the first thing I'd do is get rid of Abimelech. I'd say, show me your stuff, Abimelech. Let's see who's boss here." Zabul, governor of the city, heard what Gaal, son of Ebed, was saying and got angry. Secretly, he sent messengers to Abimelech with the message, "Gaal, son of Ebed, with his relatives have come to Shechem and are stirring up trouble against you. Here's what you do. Tonight, bring your troops and wait in ambush in the field. In the morning, as soon as the sun breaks, get moving and charge the city. Gaal and his troops will come out to you, and you'll know what to do next." Abimelech and his troops, 4 companies of them, went up that night and waited in ambush approaching Shechem. Gaal, son of Ebed, had gotten up and was standing in the city gate. Abimelech and his troops left their cover. When Gaal saw them, he said to Zabul, "Look at that, people coming down from the tops of the mountains." Zabul said, "That's nothing but mountain shadows. They just look like men." Gaal kept chattering away. Then he said again, "Look at the troops coming down from Tabor Erez," which means the navel of the world, and one company coming straight from the Oracle Rock. Zabul said, "Where's that big mouth of yours now? You who said, 'And who is Abimelech that we should take orders from him?' Well, there he is with the troops you ridiculed. Here's your chance. Fight away." Gaal went out, backed by the leaders of Shechem, and did battle with Abimelech. Abimelech chased them, and Gaal turned tail and ran. Many fell wounded right up to the city gate. Abimelech set up his field headquarters at Arumah, while Zabul kept Gaal and his relatives out of Shechem. The next day, they went out into the fields. This was reported to Abimelech. He took his troops, divided them into 3 companies, and placed them in ambush in the fields. When he saw that the people were well out in the open, he sprang up and attacked them. Abimelech and the company with him charged ahead and took control of the entrance to the city gate. The other 2 companies chased down those who were in the open fields and killed them. Abimelech fought at that city all that day. He captured the city and massacred everyone in it. He leveled the city to the ground and sold it with salt. When the leaders connected with Shechem's tower heard this, they went to the fortified God of the Covenant temple. This was reported to Abimelech that the Shechem's tower bunch were gathered together. He and his troops climbed Mount Zalmon, which means dark mountain. Abimelech took his axe and chopped a bundle of firewood, picked it up, and put it on his shoulder. He said to the troops, "Do what you've seen me doing quickly." So each of his men cut his own bundle. They followed Abimelech, piled their bundles against the tower fortifications, and set the whole structure on fire. Everyone in Shechem's tower died, about 1,000 men and women. Abimelech went on to Thebez. He camped at Thebez and captured it. The tower's strength stood in the middle of the city. All the men and women of the city, along with the city leaders, had fled and locked themselves in. They were up on the tower roof. Abimelech got as far as the tower and assaulted it. He came up to the tower to set it on fire. Just then, some woman dropped an upper millstone on his head and crushed his skull. He called urgently to his young armor-bearer and said, "Draw your sword and kill me so that they can't say a woman killed him." His armor-bearer drove in his sword, and Abimelech died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. God avenged the evil Abimelech had done to his father, murdering his 70 brothers, and brought down on the heads of the men of Shechem all the evil they had done, the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal. Judges chapter 10. Tola. Tola, son of Puas, the son of Dodo, was next after Abimelech. He rose to the occasion to save Israel. He was a man of Issachar. He lived in Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. He judged Israel for 23 years and then died and was buried at Shamir. Jair. After him, Jair the Gileadite stepped into leadership. He judged Israel for 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys and had 30 towns in Gilead. The towns are still called Jair's village. Jair died and was buried in Kaman. And the people of Israel went back to doing evil in God's sight. They worshiped the Baal gods and the Ashtoreth goddesses, gods of Aram, Sidon, and Moab, gods of the Moabites and Philistines. They just walked off and left God, quit worshiping him. And God exploded in hot anger at Israel and sold them off to the Philistines and Ammonites, who beginning that year bullied and tattered the people of Israel mercilessly. For 18 years they had them under their thumb, all the people of Israel who lived east of the Jordan in the Amorite country of Gilead. And the Ammonites crossed the Jordan to go to war also against Judah, Benjamin, and Ephraim. Israel was in a bad way. The people of Israel cried out to God for help. We've sinned against you. We left our God and worshiped the Baal gods. God answered the people of Israel. When the Egyptians, Amorites, Ammonites, Philistines, Sidonians, and even Amalek and Midian oppressed you and you cried out to me for help, I saved you from them. And now you've gone off and betrayed me, worshiping other gods. I'm not saving you anymore. Go ahead. Cry out for the help to the gods you've chosen. Let them get you out of the mess you're in. The people of Israel said to God, we've sinned. Do to us whatever you think best, but please get us out of this. Then they cleaned house of the foreign gods and worshiped only God. And God took Israel's troubles to heart. Jephthah. The Ammonites prepared for war, setting up camp in Gilead. The people of Israel set their rival camp in Mizpah. The leaders in Gilead said, who will stand for us against the Ammonites? We'll make him head over everyone in Gilead. Jephthah the Gileadite, Judges chapter 11. Jephthah the Gileadite was one tough warrior. He was the son of a prostitute, but Gilead was his father. Meanwhile, Gilead's legal wife had given him other sons, and when they grew up, his wife's sons threw Jephthah out. They told him, you're not getting any of our family inheritance. You're the son of another woman. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and went to live in the land of Tob. Some riffraff joined him and went around with him. Some time passed, and then the Ammonites started fighting Israel. With the Ammonites at war with them, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to Jephthah, come, be our general, and we'll fight the Ammonites. But Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, but you hate me. You kicked me out of your family home, so why are you coming to me now? Because you're in trouble, right? The elders of Gilead replied, that is exactly. We've come to get you to go with us and fight the Ammonites. You'll be the head over all of us, all the Gileadites. Jephthah addressed the elders of Gilead. So if you bring me back home to fight the Ammonites and God gives them to me, I'll be your head. Is that right? They said, God is witness between us. Whatever you say, we'll do. Jephthah went along with the elders of Gilead. The people made him their top man and general. And Jephthah repeated what he had said before God at Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites with the message. What's going on here that you've come into my country picking a fight? The king of the Ammonites told Jephthah's messengers, because Israel took my land when they came out of Egypt, from the Arnon all the way to the Jabbok and to the Jordan. Give it back peaceably and I'll go. Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites with the message. Jephthah's word. Israel took no Moabite land and no Ammonite land. When they came out of Egypt, Israel went through the desert as far as the Red Sea, arriving at Kadesh. There Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, let us pass through your land, please. But the king of Edom wouldn't let them in. Israel also requested permission from the king of Moab, but he wouldn't let them cross either. They were stopped in their tracks at Kadesh, so they traveled across the desert and circled around the lands of Edom and Moab. They came out east of the land of Moab and set camp on the other side of the Arnon. They didn't set foot in Moabite territory, for Arnon was the Moabite border. Israel then sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, at Heshbon, the capital. Israel asked, let us pass, please, through your land on the way to the country. But Sihon didn't trust Israel to cut across the land. He got his entire army together, set up camp at Jahaz, and fought Israel. But God, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his troops to Israel. Israel defeated them. Israel took all the Amorite land, all Amorite land from Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the desert to the Jordan. It was God, the God of Israel, who pushed out the Amorites in favor of Israel. So who do you think you are to try to take it over? Why don't you just be satisfied with what your God Chemos gives you, and we'll settle for what God our God gives us? Do you think that you're going to come off better than Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab? Did he get anywhere in opposing Israel? Did he risk war? All the time, it's been 300 years now that Israel has lived in Heshbon and its villages, and Ariar and its villages, and all the towns along the Arnon. Why don't you try to snatch them away then? No, I haven't wronged you, but this is an evil thing that you're doing to me by starting a fight. Today, God, the judge, will decide between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. But the king of the Ammonites refused to listen to a word that Jephthah had sent them. God's spirit came upon Jephthah. He went across Gilead and Manasseh, went through Mizpah of Gilead, from there approached the Ammonites. Jephthah made a vow before God. If you give me a clear victory over the Ammonites, and I'll give you to God whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in one piece from among the Ammonites. I'll offer it up in a sacrificial burnt offering. Then Jephthah was off to fight the Ammonites, and God gave them to him. He beat them soundly all the way from Ariar to the area around Minna as far as Abel-Kariam, 20 cities. A massacre. Ammonites brought to their knees by the people of Israel. Jephthah came home to Mizpah. His daughter ran from the house to welcome him home, dancing to tambourines. She was his only child. He had no son or daughter except her. When he realized who it was, he ripped his clothes, saying, "Ah, dearest daughter, I'm dirt. I'm despicable. My heart is torn to shreds. I made a vow to God, and I can't take it back." She said, "Dear father, if you made a vow to God, do to me what you vowed." God did his part and saved you from your Ammonite enemies. Then she said to her father, "But let this one thing be done for me. Give me 2 months to wander through the hills and lament my virginity, since I will never marry, I and my dear friends." "Oh, yes, go," he said. He sent her off for 2 months. She and her girlfriends went among the hills, lamenting that she would never marry. At the end of the 2 months, she came back to her father. He fulfilled the vow with her that he had made. She had never slept with a man. It became a custom in Israel that for 4 days every year the young women of Israel went out to mourn for the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. Judges, strange story. Judges chapter 12. The men of Ephraim mustered their troops, crossed to Zaphon, and said to Jephthah, "Why did you go out to fight the Ammonites without letting us go with you? Is that Ephraim again causing trouble? We're going to burn your house down on you." Why are you all always making threats like that, Ephraimites? Jephthah said, "I and my people had our hands full negotiating with the Ammonites, and I did call to you for help, but you ignored me. When I saw that you weren't coming, I took my life in my hands and confronted the Ammonites myself, and God gave them to me. So why did you show up here today? Are you spoiling for a fight with me?" So Jephthah got his Gilead troops together, and he fought Ephraim. And the men of Gilead hit them hard because they were saying, "Gileadites are nothing but half-breeds and rejects from Ephraim and Manasseh." Ooh, wow. Gilead captured the fords of the Jordan at the crossing of Ephraim. If an Ephraimite fugitive said, "Let me cross," the men of Gilead would ask, "Are you an Ephraimite?" And he would say, "No." And they would say Shibboleth. But he would always say Sibboleth. He couldn't say it right. Then they would grab him and kill him there at the fords of the Jordan. 42 Ephraimite divisions were killed on that occasion. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years. Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in the city, Mizpah of Gilead. Ibzan. After him, Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He gave his daughters in marriage outside his clan and brought in 30 daughters-in-law from the outside for his sons. He judged Israel 7 years. Ibzan died and was buried in Bethlehem. Elon. After him, Elon the Zebulunite judged Israel. He judged Israel 10 years. Elon the Zebulunite died and was buried at Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. Abdon. After him, Abdon, son of Hillel the Pirathite, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. Abdon, son of Hillel the Pirathonite, died and was buried at Pirathon in the land of Ephraim in the Malachite hill country. Judges 13, Samson. And the people of Israel were back at it again, doing what was evil in God's sight. God put them under the domination of the Philistines for 40 years. At that time, there was a man named Manoah from Zorah from the tribe of Dan. His wife was barren and childless. The angel of God appeared to her and told her, "I know that you're barren and childless, but you're going to become pregnant and bear a son. But take much care. Drink no wine or beer. Eat nothing ritually unclean. You are in fact pregnant right now, carrying a son. No razor will touch his head. The boy will be God's Nazarite from the moment of his birth. He will launch the deliverance from Philistine oppression." The woman went to her husband and said, "A man of God came to me. He looked like the angel of God, terror laced with glory. I didn't ask him where he was from and he didn't tell me his name, but he told me, 'You're pregnant. You're going to give birth to a son. Don't drink any wine or beer. Eat anything ritually unclean. The boy will be God's Nazarite from the moment of birth to the day of his death.' Manoah prayed to God, 'Master, let the man of God you sent to us come to us again and teach us how to raise this boy who is to be born.' God listened to Manoah. God's angel came again to the woman. She was sitting in the field. Her husband Manoah wasn't there with her. She jumped to her feet and ran and told her husband, 'He's back, the man who came to me that day.' Manoah got up and following his wife came to the man. He said to him, 'Are you the man who spoke to my wife?' He said, 'I am.' Manoah said, 'So when what you say comes true, what do you have to tell us about this boy and his work?' The angel of God said to Manoah, 'Keep in mind everything I told the woman. Eat nothing that comes from the vine, drink no wine or beer, eat no ritually unclean foods. She's to observe everything I commanded her.' Manoah said to the angel of God, 'Please stay with us a little longer. We'll prepare a meal for you, a young goat.' God's angel said to Manoah, 'Even if I stay, I won't eat your food. But if you want to prepare a whole burnt offering for God, go ahead, offer it.' Manoah had no idea that he was talking to the angel of God. Then Manoah asked the angel of God, 'What's your name? When your words come true, we'd like to honor you.' The angel of God said, 'What's this? You asked for my name? You wouldn't understand. It's sheer wonder.' So Manoah took the kid and the grain offering and sacrificed him on a rock altar to God who works wonders. As the flames leapt from the altar to heaven, God's angel also descended in the altar flames. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell face down to the ground. Manoah and his wife never saw the angel of God again. Only then did Manoah realize that this was God's angel. He said to his wife, "We're as good as dead. We've looked on God." But his wife said, "If God were planning to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our whole burnt offering and grain offering and revealed all these things to us, giving us this birth announcement." The woman gave birth to a son. They named him Samson. The boy grew and God blessed him. The Spirit of God began working in him while he was staying at a Danite camp between Zorah and Eshtaol. This is the word of